When you think of paradise, you probably picture something like this: Tioman Island, Malaysia. It's a protected marine park known for these picture-perfect beaches and incredible coral reefs. I mean, it really looks untouched. But as we all know, there's this invisible threat that's creeping into every corner of our planet: microplastic pollution. And as a team of scientists recently found out, even paradise isn't immune. So let's dive in and see what they uncovered. And that really brings us to the big question, doesn't it? Can a place like Tioman, which relies on its natural beauty for ecotourism, actually escape our global plastic mess? Well, for the very first time, a group of scientists decided to find out for sure. They launched a study to see what was really hiding in that beautiful white sand. All right, so our scientific detective story begins. It's time to put this stunning island under the microscope, literally, and see what's going on. So what exactly are we hunting for here? Microplastics. We're talking about these tiny little bits of plastic less than 5 millimeters across. They're what happens when bigger plastic stuff, like bottles and bags, get beaten up by the sun and the waves. And beaches are kind of tricky. They're both a sink, where these particles pile up, and a source, where they can get washed right back out into the ocean. And get this, what's really wild is that while people had looked at the seawater around Tiamen before, nobody had ever actually checked the sand on the beaches. So this study wasn't just another data point, it was creating the very first baseline, the first real snapshot for this incredible natural treasure. Okay, so the mission was clear, but how in the world do you go about looking for something so tiny in a place that's so, well, huge? The team needed a really solid plan. And here was the game plan. They surveyed 22 different spots across 4 of the island's most popular beaches. And to see if things changed over time, they collected samples twice, once in July and then again in September. Now, they were smart about it. They focused right on the rack line. That line of seaweed and stuff left by the high tide. That's where debris naturally piles up, making it the perfect place to find what's washed ashore. Now, Tiumen's a pretty remote place, right? So you can't just bring in a bunch of heavy, fancy lab gear. They had to get creative. They came up with this really simple but totally effective method. They'd scoop up the top layer of sand, dump in some seawater, and then just stir like crazy. All the heavy sand would sink, and the lightweight little plastic bits, they'd float right to the top, ready to be skimmed off. Just a brilliant, low-tech solution to a very modern problem. All right, with all the samples collected, it was time for the big reveal. What clues were hiding in the sands of Tioman? The first number is in. After all that careful work, the team confirmed a grand total of 171 microplastic particles. So there it is, the first critical finding. Yes, microplastics are here. Paradise is not completely untouched. But that one number, it definitely doesn't tell the whole story. See, when they broke it down by month, a really interesting pattern popped up. They found way more microplastics in July than they did in September. And that shows us that this pollution isn't just sitting there. It's a dynamic thing, probably changing with the monsoons, the ocean currents, and maybe even the number of tourists. So what did this plastic junk actually look like? Well, most of it, over half, was fragments, just little broken off pieces of bigger things. After that, it was foams, probably from stuff like styrofoam coolers or packaging. This tells us that the pollution is mostly secondary, meaning it's coming from the breakdown of everyday trash. And when they dug even deeper into the chemistry, they identified the main culprits: polystyrene and polypropylene. Now, don't let the fancy names fool you. You know these plastics really well. Polystyrene is basically styrofoam, and polypropylene is used in, well, everything, from takeout containers to car parts. So this isn't some weird industrial waste. It's literally the plastic from our daily lives. Okay, so we've got bits of plastic from consumer goods on the beaches. The story seems pretty straightforward, and honestly, kind of depressing. But hold on. This is where the whole investigation takes a completely unexpected turn. The expectation, right, based on what we've seen in other nearby places, was that Tiaman was going to be pretty heavily polluted. But the reality? It was something else entirely. Yes, the microplastics were there, but the amount of them, it was surprisingly low. And that, right there, was the biggest shock of the whole study. And just look at this comparison to really get it. Tioman's beaches had somewhere between 100 and 172 particles per square meter. Now look at some other beaches in the region. Lam Son On in Thailand had around 650. I mean, the difference is just massive. Tioman isn't just a little bit cleaner, it's way cleaner. Which, of course, leads us to the final, and maybe the most important mystery of all. If we're all swimming in this global sea of plastic, how is this one little island bucking the trend? What is Tioman's secret? Well, the answer, as it turns out, has less to do with ocean currents and geography and everything to do with people. The last part of our story reveals Tioman's winning strategy. The researchers figured out it came down to a few key things. First, regular beach cleanups are just a part of life there, grabbing the big plastic trash before it has a chance to break down. Second, there's a really strong sense of community and leadership, and it's all driven by this powerful economic reason. Ecotourism is the island's lifeblood, so keeping the environment clean literally pays the bills. And really, this quote from the study just nails it. It's the citizen-led activities, the everyday actions of the people who call this place home that are probably making the biggest difference. By getting rid of the big plastics, they're cutting off the supply of microplastics right at the source. So what's the big takeaway from all this? Honestly, it's an incredibly hopeful one. In a fight against pollution that can feel totally overwhelming sometimes, this study proves that consistent local action can make a real measurable difference. It shows that it's not just about big global agreements, it's about communities taking care of their own backyard. And that leaves us with one last really powerful question to think about. This whole thing started as a search for pollution in paradise, but it ended up uncovering a model for success. It shows us what's possible when a community really works together to protect its home. So the real question is, can Tioman's local success become a global blueprint?